I encountered ghosts of people still alive in my haunted hometown. I never should have opened that door. It was just another Tuesday in Willow Creek, the kind of day where the sun hung dumbly in the sky. I could smell fresh coffee and see shadows dance across my living room walls. The air felt thick, warm, almost inviting, but deep down, something didn't sit right. My routine was shattered by a sudden crash. The sound of broken glass echoed through the stillness, sending chills racing up my spine. I froze. A cold breeze swept through the room, wrapping around me like a ghostly hand. I could hear rustling in the hallway, whispers that seemed to creep closer. My heart raced, thumping loudly in my ears. Shadows flickered in the corners of my vision. I dared to peek into the dim hallway, where the light barely stretched. The floorboards creaked beneath my weight, the sound unnaturally loud in the thick silence. I stepped forward, feeling the cool air crawl across my skin. It felt like a warning, a sign to turn back, but curiosity pushed me onward. I glanced back at my living room, where the sunlight now seemed to dim, swallowed by something unseen. I could swear I saw fleeting figures dart through the corners of my eyes, people who weren't quite there but felt all too familiar. Each snapshot of movement left me breathless, as if I was about to uncover something beyond comprehension. Then the house groaned, a deep, unsettling sound that made me jolt. I held my breath, straining to hear anything beyond the cacophony of my own pulse. Was that laughter? The sinister sort that bubbled up from the pit of a shadowed well. The fear clawed at my throat, lodged there like a bitter truth I was not ready to accept. I could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon me, watching, waiting for me to make my next move. I moved closer to the door at the end of the hallway. Fingers trembling, I reached for the knob. It felt ice cold, sending shocks through my hand. I hesitated, a heavy lump settling in my stomach. As I twisted the handle, a gust of air slammed against me, as if warning me to stop. But it was too late. The door swung open, creaking loudly, revealing a pitch-black void. And then, out of that emptiness, a figure stepped into the dimness. I could feel my breath hitch, panic clawing its way up my throat. My heart raced uncontrollably. The figure was blurry at first, then sharpened into something familiar. No, it couldn't be. My mouth opened to scream, but nothing came out. The ground felt like it was slipping from beneath me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stepped further into the light, and my worst fears were confirmed. There she was, Clara. Her smile had always been radiant, but now, it was twisted, a sickly grin creeping into place like ivy over cracked stone. I was paralyzed, unable to determine if this apparition was a figment of my deranged mind or something much more sinister. Why did you come here? Clara's voice resonated with an unnatural echo, sending shivers down my spine. The warmth I once felt from her presence now felt like ice, and I backed away instinctively, my heart thundering in my chest. She was somehow both tangible and intangible, like smoke caught in the breeze. The hallway shifted around us. The walls pulsed, morphing into something grotesque as the colors dimmed and shadows coalesced into writhing shapes. Behind Clara, the void twisted, revealing glimpses of tortured souls caught in a cycle of despair. Their faces, distorted and hollow, reached out to me as if begging for salvation, or perhaps, for company in their torment. Leave this place, Clara hissed, her voice now laced with venom. Or join them. Something deep within me stirred a horrible recognition of our shared past, buried memories bubbling to the surface. I wanted to scream, but the sound lodged in my throat, choked by rising terror. I thought of the time we spent by the creek, laughing as the sunlight danced across the water's surface. Those innocent days felt like a lie now shrouded in this dark reality. Then, from the depths of the blackened doorway, a chilling sound erupted, high-pitched wails, the cries of the lost tormented souls that clawed at my sanity. Behind Clara, shadows longed to seize me with skeletal fingers, each grasp more desperate than the last. The temperature plummeted, I could almost see my breath cloud in the air, freezing the heat of my rising panic. "Don't let them take you!" Clara shouted, her voice breaking. She reached toward me, and in that moment, I saw her eyes flash with something human and real fear. But it was quickly swallowed by the encroaching shadow surrounding her, and for a brief second, I thought she was trying to warn me. The hallway twisted even more, pulling and stretching, as if the house itself was constricting around us. I felt an urge to flee, but where? The path back was shrouded in darkness, and before I could make a decision, a chill whispered through the air, carrying with it a symphony of laughter, the kind that haunted dreams and turned them into nightmares. Suddenly, Clara's fleeting warmth flickered out, replaced by dread. "They are coming for you," she gasped, her facial features melting into the shadows wrapping around her. "You cannot escape your fate." Panic surged through me as the shadows lunged forward, grasping at my arms, cold, clammy fingers clutching at my very essence. I fought against them, kicking, gasping, but the darkness only seemed to draw closer, engulfing me. I stumbled and turned to see the face of Clara dissolve into the blackness that had claimed her. My heart raced as I realized I was about to be consumed. In the chaos, a blinding light pierced through the darkness, illuminating the way back. I lunged for it, but the darkness clung to me, pulling me downward, and I froze in terror. A voice whispered in my ear, sweet and low, sending icy fingers crawling up my spine, "You can't leave me again, can you?" As I teetered on the edge of oblivion, frantically reaching for the light, I felt a sharp pull from behind, a force that caused me to whirl around and face the darkness once more. There, shifting and swirling like a beast hungry for my soul, was Clara, fully transformed. She was no longer an ethereal figure, but a grotesque, hollow version of herself, her mouth stretched impossibly wide, laughter ringing in a sinister chorus that drowned out my shouts, "Stay with me." She beckoned as my grip on the doorway slipped, the light flickering now like a dying star. And then, as all hope seemed lost, something the faintest echo of a child's laugh broke through the cacophony. It reverberated through the hall, making the air thrum with energy. But it promised nothing good. With sheer desperation boiling within me, I screamed for her, screamed for whoever was left of my friend, hoping against hope for a miracle, as the shadows expanded into a hunger that threatened to swallow everything in its wake. And in that moment of terror, the ground beneath me gave way, plummeting into an abyss, and I felt myself slipping into the grip of darkness as the last flicker of light vanished from my grasp. I hit the ground hard, pain jarring through my limbs, but it was not the impact that shocked me, it was the sensations enveloping my senses. Beneath me, an unfamiliar earth pulsated with an unnatural heat, as if the very ground were alive and thrumming to some dark, ancient rhythm. I crouched there, gasping for breath, disoriented. The air was thick, heavy with something acrid, suffocating, making my throat constrict. That I hoisted myself up, bracing against the wall of a narrow corridor that stretched endlessly before me, flickering candles lining its edges, throwing grotesque shadows that danced with unholy glee. As my eyes adjusted, I caught fleeting glimpses of images in the flickering light, shapes of familiar faces twisted in agony, their mouths stretched wide as though they were eternally screaming. I stumbled down the corridor, each step echoing in a chilling symphony of whispers, the low susurrus crawling under my skin. The air vibrated with faint laughter, but it was nothing like the joyful sound from my childhood memories. This was cruel and mocking, resonating with the very dread that filled my heart. Their disembodied voices seemed to beckon me, speckled with madness, "Come play with us. Stay forever. You can't escape." Without warning, the corridor broadened into a vast, hollow chamber. As I stepped inside, the air thickened further, suffocating. Centuries-old portraits adorned the walls, depicting grotesque figures, their eyes glinting with unsettling life, as if they were aware of my presence. I froze, noticing a heavy presence coiling in the air, surrounding me with cold, clinging fingers. In the center of the room, a crumbling pedestal stood, on top of which lay an ancient book, its pages fluttering open as if caught in a gale I could not feel. As if drawn by an unseen force, I stepped closer, the magnetic pull of the book drowning out the voices. The moment my fingers grazed over the pages, a tremor rippled through me, igniting memories long buried under layers of fear. The deepest sorrow collapsed upon me. A montage of faces emerged in my mind, friends lost, laughter turned to torment, moments of joy twisting into horror. At that moment, I realized these were not just memories, they were the lives of those I'd once loved, twisted into shadows of their former selves. They were trapped, wretched remnants of the light they once embodied, eternally yearning for freedom but chained to the anguish of their demise. Suddenly, the voices intensified, clawing at my sanity. They feed on fear. Join us. They echoed, resonating through the walls, rattling the very structure of the chamber. My heartbeat quickened as I felt the chamber constrict around me, walls closing in, the visceral terror wrapping tighter. Clara. I shouted into the abyss, but my plea was swallowed by the cacophony. As if invoked by my outcry, the shadows coalesced once more, rising around me like a tsunami of darkness. These were not just shadows cast by the flickering light. The darkness was alive, howling, hungry, ready to engulf me. I turned, falling back, desperate, my heart racing like a haunted drum. The images on the wall began to shift, the expressions of the portraits warping into monstrous grins, their mouths stretching wide. They began to whisper, "Come with us. Leave now or embrace the inevitable." With raw panic surging through me, I remembered the echoes of laughter from before. "Is she here?" I whispered, a spark of hope mingling with the dread. I moved toward the turmoil, toward the disturbing cacophony, hoping against hope that I might still find Clara, or a remnant of what she used to be, but as I stepped deeper into the chaos, the shadows broke loose from their previous forms, coiling around my legs, pulling me backward into their clutch. I fought against their grip, my hands clawing at the ground, desperately seeking purchase. But it was like trying to hold water. I was sinking, losing ground, losing control, the darkness rising around me like a wave crashing upon the shore. Then, just as I thought I would be swallowed whole, I glimpsed a shimmer pale and silvery darting through the shadows. A familiar presence. "Clara!" I screamed, but my voice barely penetrated the frenzy of shadows, the laughter morphing into chilling howls. She was there, just beyond reach, eyes gleaming with despair, yet a flicker of recognition burned through the madness. "You mustn't." Her voice was silenced by the tide of darkness swirling between us, and then, the final, devastating realization hit me like ice water. The shimmering was not Clara rising from the depths, it was a reflection of every soul left behind, and deep within the swirling darkness, I could feel my own fear rising to the surface, threatening to drag me down into the abyss of despair with them. Just as the shadows began to pull me under completely, I caught one last glimpse of Clara, her face now obscured by a veil of shadow, her form fading into the oppressive dark until it was nothing more than a flickering mirage. The laughter crescendoed, and with a final, desperate scream, the shadows enveloped my vision. "They are coming for you," and then silence. The silence felt like a weight pressing down from every direction, an oppressive stillness that seemed to mock my desperation. I blinked in the darkness, realizing I had been grasping at nothing but a fleeting memory twisted into a cruel illusion. The laughter faded into a faint echo, but its malevolence lingered, crawling under my skin that I sank to the floor, feeling the cold, rough stone against my palms. I was utterly alone, yet the air around me felt charged, as if unseen eyes were scrutinizing my every move. The absence of sound was more terrifying than the cacophony I had just endured, a horrifying calm that hinted at more to come. My heart raced, the echo of it loud in my ears, keeping time with a rhythm I could not identify. Had I truly seen Clara? Or was she yet another figment, an illusion crafted by the darkness to ensnare me? I needed to find out. I shoved myself up from the ground, forcing my legs to move, my determination warring with the lingering paralysis of fear. The chamber seemed to shift as I moved, its shadows flickering as if alive, whispering and twisting at the edges of my vision. I stumbled back toward the portrait wall, desperate for clarity, and as I looked again, the once familiar faces now morphed grotesquely, mouths stretched into soundless screams while hollow eyes stared through centuries of sorrows. I swayed, feeling their anguish seep into me, burning at the edges of my consciousness. Suddenly, the air crackled, sending a jolt of electricity through the room. I turned, half expecting to see an inhabitant of this wretched place emerge from the very walls. Instead, a shape darted from the shadows. My breath caught an indistinct figure moved with purpose, emanating a sense of desperation that mirrored my own. "Clara?" I dared to whisper. The figure abruptly stopped and turned. It was not Clara, but a girl, her features obscured in darkness. She was bent over, frantically clawing at the ground, as though trying to break through to something below. "Help me. Please, you have to help me." Her voice pierced through the tension, raw and pleading. "Who are you?" I stammered, half tempted to retreat into the shadows myself, a more instinctual urge that now clashed with my instinct to help. "Time is running out," she gasped, glancing back over her shoulder as if sensing something behind her. Her eyes shrank in terror, and suddenly she seemed so fragile, a soul ensnared, a flicker of light in an overwhelming darkness. "You have to find it before they do. Before it's too late." "Find what?" I pressed, my pulse echoing in my ears as I scanned the chamber for any sign of danger. "The heart. The heart of this place." She gestured wildly, visibly trembling. "It's hidden. We could both be free." But her voice faltered, and the shadows around her thickened, tightening as though drawn to her fear. "What do you mean? What heart?" My mind raced. I sensed deeper truth lingering just out of reach, some dark power pulsing beneath the earth, but the sensation eluded me as swiftly as it appeared. But before she could respond, the shadows blazed to life, swirling violently around her. Her eyes locked onto mine in sheer panic, her mouth forming silent screams as the darkness consumed her, pulling her back into the abyss from whence she emerged. "Help me!" She choked one last time, and then silence swallowed her whole, leaving nothing but the echo of her voice in the stillness. My breath quickened as I darted toward where she had been. I could feel the air growing heavier, the pulsation of something below resonating with the terror surging through me. What heart? What was hidden within this chamber that could hold such power? My mind raced, torn between the urge to flee and the grim curiosity drawing me closer to the unknown. Suddenly, I felt it beneath my feet, a rhythmic pulsing, as though the very ground was alive and throbbing with agony. I knelt, placing my hands flat against the cool stone, trying to regain some semblance of control over this rising tide of panic. In that moment, shadows began to twitch and shiver around me, and the walls vibrated in response to what I perceived. Then, a whisper almost tender, yet dripping with malice. "You found one of us," and yet the voice drew closer, weaving around me like a spider's web. "How quaint that you think you can piece together this broken shroud you tread upon." There was a tangible glee in the words, a dark delight that sent chills coursing through me. I whipped around, dread pooling in my stomach, my heart hammering as figures began to materialize, spectral shapes dancing in and out of view, faces that were both familiar and foreign. "They want to keep playing," they intoned in unison, an echo of distorted memories merging with shadows. "Will you join them?" Before I could answer, the ground beneath me began to crack, and a chasm opened, its depths glowing with a fiery red hue, pulsating like a living creature. Terror surged as I realized I was not just in a haunted chamber. I stood on the precipice of a ravenous void waiting for something or someone to plunge into its insatiable hunger. The darkness swirled with renewed ferocity, and I felt myself teetering on the edge, a panicked scream lodged in my throat as I was drawn toward it. "Find the heart." The vanished girl's warning echoed in my mind, but the shadows loomed larger, threatening to pull me down into the abyss. In that moment of desperation, I caught a glimpse of Clara's face emerge from the chaos, twisted and haunted, a reflection of my own despair. "Don't let it take you," she shrieked, and as her voice sliced through the fog of my terror, I fought against the tide, desperate to remember who I was and what I might still have left to lose. And with that thought spiraling in my mind, the darkness surged forth, eager to claim me. As the precipice crumbled beneath my feet, horror seized me, but just as suddenly, everything went black. Nothing. I was drowning in the void, a chilling darkness that wrapped around me like icy tendrils, squeezing the breath from my lungs. My thoughts scattered like ash in the wind, lost to the howling silence that reverberated around me. For an uncertain eternity, I felt weightless and lost adrift in a timeless expanse far removed from the horrors I had just escaped. Then, light began to seep through the blackness, fractured and flickering, pulling me back to consciousness like an unwelcome reminder of the world I had fought to flee. As sensation returned, I was met with a sight that sent a chill down my spine. I lay on the cold stone floor once more, but the chamber had changed around me. The pervading darkness felt less like an oppressive blanket and more like a living entity, as though it had shifted, reshaping itself according to some sinister will. "Can you hear me?" A voice floated to me, soft yet urgent, surrounded by an unsettling undertone that sent prickles down my spine. It belonged to a woman, her figure obscured by shadows, her features barely illuminated in the gauzy light. "You must listen closely." I struggled to sit up, my limbs weighted as if shackled. Finally, I managed to prop myself against the damp stones that felt slick beneath my fingertips. "Who are you?" I rasped, my voice barely above a whisper, swallowed by the uncanny atmosphere. "Where is Clara?" "What does this mean?" Clara is the woman's brow furrowed, her expression morphing into one of fierce determination. "She is a key, but not the only one." "What do you mean?" I pressed, panic climbing in my throat. "There are countless souls trapped here, bound to this place by threads of despair. You've awakened something, but it is not yet time to confront it," she warned, her eyes flickering with a depth I couldn't begin to fathom. "Beneath this chamber lies a network, an intricate web connecting the hearts of the lost. You must navigate its treachery, or you will become a part of it." I shook my head, the weight of her words bearing down on me. "I don't understand. What do you want from me?" Before she could respond, the room swallowed her voice, and the shadows surged, coiling around my wrists as if intent on claiming me. Cold dread settled in my chest, and instinctively, I struggled against the inky grasp, but the more I fought, the tighter they pulled. "Find the hearts." The woman's voice echoed through the dark, now layered with desperation. "They will help you. Only in understanding will you find your way out." Then, in a swift, blinding flash, she vanished, leaving in her place a collection of mirrors that lined the walls, each reflecting distorted versions of myself. They shimmered, rippling like reflections in troubled water, each one dressed in the same expression of terror. The ground beneath began to tremor, sending vibrations through the air that felt like the pounding of a restless heartbeat, alive and hungry. As I turned to the nearest mirror, I saw her again, or at least a version of her, clawing at the edge of another mirror, trapped in her own despair. I reached out, compelled by an otherworldly pull, but her mouth opened in a silent scream, and abruptly, she melted into the glass, her tortured visage replaced by a swirling void. The darkness seemed to pulse with a new intensity, and I gripped my temples, trying to fend off the rising tide of panic. I had to push forward. I had to find this heart she spoke of, or I would be swallowed by the shadows forever. But then I heard an echo of laughter, creeping from the corners of the chamber. Hollow, mocking laughter that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I spun around, desperate to find its source, but all I saw was darkness watching and waiting, the shadows tightening around me. A sudden surge of movement caught my attention, and I turned to an open doorway that I had not noticed before. It loomed ominously, an invitation to fear, and yet somehow, it beckoned with the promise of answers. With my heart hammering in my chest, I took a tentative step forward, drawn to whatever lay beyond, but as I crossed the threshold, the laughter crescendoed into a cacophony, a chorus of sinister whispers that filled my mind with a chilling realization I was not alone. Shadows surged around me, twisting and shifting, forming grotesque faces that stared hungrily, mouths agape in soundless cries. That I felt the pull of the darkness intensify, and before I could brace myself, the figures collided together, merging into one horrid mass, a grotesque collection of my fears that clawed at my sanity. Time stretched, and just as I teetered on the brink of withdrawal, I stood jaw agape, eyes wide as the ground began to dissolve once more. "You are the heart," one voice murmured softly before dissolving into the swirling black, and then, a hand shot out of the darkness, grasping my wrist with an iron grip. As my heartbeat thundered in my ears, fear coursing through my veins, I was yanked forward into the void, into the heart of this nightmare. The laughter rang in my ears, deliriously mocking me, drowning my thoughts as I fell deeper into madness. Then the world faded, the darkness parting like a shroud, and a colossal figure loomed before me in the unexpected light, one that I dreaded to recognize. As it leaned in, its face twisted into a familiar facade of malevolence. The laughter grew silent, replaced by a whisper that felt like cold fingers crawling across my skin. "Welcome home." The sudden light engulfed me, blinding in its agony, and I squeezed my eyes shut against it. Heart racing, I began to discern shapes in the brightness, fuzzy outlines that seemed to hover just beyond reach. A desperate sense of familiarity surged within me, pulling me back toward that tethered state of reality, even as nausea twisted my stomach. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the chamber. I stood in the street of my hometown, yet it felt like a ghostly echo of the life I knew. The familiar storefronts had transformed into decrepit husks, their windows shattered, the remnants of memories swirling like dust in the oppressive air. The sun hung high, yet shadows pooled in the corners of every alley, and a bitter chill draped itself across my shoulders, bringing an unnatural quiet. "Clara?" I called, uncertainty lacing my voice. The name felt like a stone thrown into a lake, rippling across surfaces that should have reflected her presence. But the only reply was the wind, carrying more laughter, more whispers that wrapped around me like a shroud. With every step, the ground seemed to pulse beneath my feet, as if recognizing my movement, beckoning me deeper into the town's haunting embrace. The streets morphed and twisted like haunted fragments of my recollection, leading me further from where I had emerged. There was an unsettling energy, a sense that unseen eyes watched me from the gnarled branches and cracked pavement that I turned into the narrow alley where Clara and I used to play hide and seek. The brick walls loomed like sentinels, and for a fleeting moment, I recalled her laughter, bright and innocent before the darkness settled in our lives. I pushed aside the gnawing dread, focusing instead on the pulse of something, an almost tangible heartbeat echoing back at me from the shadows. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the other end of the alley, standing motionless in an aura of whispering twilight. My breath caught in my throat. It was Clara, yet an unsettling echo of her childhood self. Her eyes, once vibrant, were now dull and sunken, brimming with sorrow. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice distorted, as if the very air around us twisted her sound. I staggered closer, desperation propelling me, but fear gripped my heart. This wasn't the bright girl I remembered, but a shade, spectral and trapped, waiting in constant torment. "What happened to you?" I croaked, fighting the urge to retreat. Her pale hand reached out, trembling, and an icy wave washed over me, pulling me further down into dark memories that clawed at my consciousness. "They took me," she whispered, tears welling in her hollow eyes. "The heart of this place consumes, it will take you too unless you remember." Suddenly, an ominous rumble reverberated through the ground. A fissure opened at my feet, splintering the pavement and yawning with hungry shadows. The darkness spilled forth, dragging Clara back into the depths with an agonized scream, her words fraying into the night. "No! Clara!" I lunged forward, but invisible barriers pushed against me, forcing me back. The shadows writhed, a maelstrom of anguish and grief, taunting me with her fading cries. Panic surged through me, a visceral need to pull her from the maw of despair. A figure materialized beside me amidst the chaos, wreathed in shadow, a man dressed in the threads of despair. "You must choose, wanderer," he rasped, his voice like gravel scraping against bone. "Release her, or embrace your own fate. Who are you?" I gasped, struggling against the overwhelming weight of darkness that threatened to drown me. "An echo, a remnant of the lost," he murmured, pointing at the churning abyss. "But you can be more. You carry the key to salvation or destruction." With that, the ground beneath me wrenched, and I lost my footing, tumbling toward the gaping chasm that yawned hungrily. As I fell, the world shifted once more, the air thick with a suffocating dread. My thoughts spiraled into chaos, and as the ground vanished below, I screamed Clara's name, desperate to breach the veil, but just before I was enveloped by the abyss, I glimpsed Something an unmistakable shape flitting through the Shadowsa heart, beating against the weight of the darkness. A pulse that felt so familiar, yet so terrifying that it wasn't just a choice anymore, it was a trap, and as I plummeted, the laughter returned, echoing in the void, "Welcome home again." The world around me reformed in a cacophony of dull colors and fractured memories, depositing me unceremoniously onto the damp ground of a park I had once known. The skeletal limbs of ancient trees danced eerily above me, their gnarled roots snaking through the earth like twisted fingers seeking to ensnare anything unwary enough to tread upon their territory. The air whispered secrets, tainted with the smells of decay and the palpable weight of unfinished stories that lingered here. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, desperately trying to shake off the echoes of Clara's pleas. The shadows loomed ever closer, drawn by the remnants of my fear, feeding on my uncertainty. The park should have been a sanctuary familiar and comforting, but now it felt like a prison of despair, an arena for specters lingering between life and death. Swallowing hard, I moved cautiously toward the play area, where a rusted swing swayed back and forth as if stirred by an invisible force. I remembered pushing Clara on it, her laughter chiming like bells. But now it was a hollow sound that resonated against the dismal backdrop. I paused, the chill in the air wrapping around me, and for a fleeting second, I wondered if the laughter was perhaps coming from beyond the veil. As I stepped closer, the swing creaked, and I felt a presence settle beside me, a soft, ephemeral warmth that sent a shiver of unease down my spine. I turned slowly, and there, flickering in and out of reality, stood Clara's mother, her face wreathed in an expression of sorrow so profound it echoed through time. But within her translucent form, I could see a flicker of life, a vibrancy that belied her ghostly demeanor. "Help me," she gasped, and as she reached toward me, it felt as if the very air thickened with an overwhelming sense of urgency. "Save her before it's too late." I flinched, blood running cold in my veins. "What do you mean? Where is she?" "Here. She is here," Clara's mother cried out, her voice becoming a wail that shattered the silence and summoned other figures from the gloom, faces blurred by grief, each echoing a different cry for release. Their eyes were hollow, their bodies insubstantial, but the pain radiating from them was sharp and unyielding, driving nails of despair into my heart. The shadows twitched with anticipation, growing bolder, seeping into the cracks of my consciousness. I staggered back, trying to breathe, overwhelmed by the silent screams of the past. I could feel Clara slipping away like sand between my fingers, the walls of this nightmare tightening around me, leaving me no space to escape. "Why are you all trapped here?" I shouted to the encroaching darkness, searching for answers among the shifting forms. "You must know how to help. Tell me what I need to do." Suddenly, a piercing howl cut through the air, and a grotesque figure emerged from the mists, its body twisted and contorted, a faceless nightmare that loomed large, feeding on the despair that enveloped us. It reached out with clawed hands, a mouthless scream demanding my surrender. "Embrace the pain," it intoned, each word resonating deep within my bones. "Become one with our sorrow, or lose everything you hold dear." I fell to my knees, grappling with the despairing weight pressing down on me. My mind raced images of Clara's laughter, the sound of her playful voice, the warmth of her small hand in mine. How could I abandon that for fear of what would emerge from the depths? The dark figure loomed closer, its stench of rot suffocating. Every thought in my mind screamed to run, yet something pulled me toward the spectre's undeniable need to understand their plight, to shatter the chains binding them here. "Your choice, wanderer." The entity hissed, a cacophony of anguished voices intertwining with the shadows. "Your light or your darkness, choose." The impossibility of the decision weighed down heavily, and somewhere in the swirling chaos, I caught sight of something in Clara's mother's eyes, a glimmer, a spark of hope tainted by fear. "Remember," she urged, her voice faded but fierce, as if straining against the very fabric of the beyond. "Find the heart, it knows the way." But before I could respond, the darkness erupted around me, the shadows engulfing everything in an endless night. As the faceless figure lunged, I grasped for the warmth of clarity, trembling between the converging shadows and the flickering light, when suddenly, the world snapped away once more, and I plunged into a void. In the silence that followed, a heartbeat echoed in the darkness, rhythmic and insistent. But it wasn't just any heartbeat, it was the pulse of a city long forgotten, thrumming with life, with dread. And somewhere amidst the stillness, a whisper reached me, cold and urgent, "You've taken your first step, but the real test is yet to come." The darkness faded to reveal a crumbling facade, and as I stood, disoriented, before a dilapidated old library, a figure stepped into view. Clara, barely a shadow of who she had been, her eyes wide with terror. "Run!" she screamed. "Before it's too late." But before I could move or comprehend her warning, a shadow lunged behind her, dragging its claws through the air as if to tear apart the very fabric of reality itself. And that was when I knew this nightmare was just beginning. The library loomed ahead like a decaying mausoleum, its once grand entrance shrouded in darkness, the wooden doors splintered and swollen with humidity. Clara's shriek reverberated through the hollow corridors of my mind, igniting a primal instinct to flee. I confronted the shadow, the unseen horror that lashed out behind Eros. It twisted and morphed, always a breath away from being defined. I wanted to run, but Clara's wide, pleading eyes anchored me, a tether to hope in this abyss of despair. "Clara!" I gasped, but the name barely broke through the tension. The shadow lurked, shimmering with malevolence, and with each pulse of darkness, it exuded a chilling promise of bad endings. "Please, we have to go," she whimpered, her ghostly form flickering like a candle at the mercy of the wind. "It wants to keep you here. It wants to keep us all." Without thinking, I plunged toward her, determined to bridge the gap of despair and take her hand. The ground crackled beneath our feet as the oppressive weight of the specter amplified, clawing at memories buried deep in the recesses of my consciousness. I felt an unnatural force push against me, an unseen current pulling me back into the library's depths. "Trust me," I shouted, grasping hers as tightly as I could. This time it was I who urged her away from the grim maw. But the shadows writhed, and the walls trembled, giving way to the whispers of knowledge long lost. They beckoned, seductive and haunting, inviting me to come closer, to open the pages and unveil the secrets that lay buried within. No. Not the books. Clara cried, her gaze distant yet sharp. "You don't understand. They contain the torment of everyone trapped. The stories twist and drown. We have to break free, not get lost in it." A part of me feared her words. The darkened library fed on legacies of sorrow, and I could almost hear the lamentation of countless souls echoing from those forsaken tomes. I released her hand, heart racing, torn between my desire to rescue her and an insatiable curiosity. My fingers brushed against the fraying spine of a book that had tumbled from the shelves. It felt alive beneath my fingertips, pulsing as if infused with the heartbeat of the shadows. "Don't touch it!" Clara screamed, rushing back toward me, but my body refused to obey. The words of the books were calling, each echo urging me to dive deeper into the horror. Every spine whispered secrets of ancient lives, veiled in betrayal and despair, while the malevolent shadow writhed in anticipation. Trembling, I opened the book, and a gust of wind roared through the library, blowing debris in a spiraling cyclone around us. Pages fluttered, revealing snapshots of lives once vibrant but now shattered, families torn apart by grief, lovers left behind by time, children lost to the void. A sudden surge of despair ripped through me, bringing a vision so potent I stumbled back, slamming against the cold wall. I saw Clara again, her laughing face, filled with innocence, replaced by terror as a nameless figure dragged her back through a shadowy portal. My heart pounded in my chest as I realized I had glimpsed the moment of her disappearance, swallowed whole by the very essence of the horror that now surrounded us. No. I shouted, desperation clawing at the back of my throat, but the book pulled me further, compelling me to understand the lore of this cursed place. Every page I turned filled my senses with a bittersweet memory, the laughter of children at play intertwining with the cries of mournful souls begging for salvation, and then I heard it, a low murmur rising from every corner, forming a symphony that pierced the oppressive silence. Help us, the voices blended together, ash and dust swirling in a cacophony of longing, luring me further into the depths of their despair. In that moment, I felt the shadow behind me solidify, not a creature of darkness, but something far worse, a reflection of all the unfinished memories, a mirroring of the infinite pain I had glimpsed. It loomed, demanding that I relinquish my hope. clawing fingers brushed against the back of my neck. Icy and unyielding, "Help them," Clara pleaded, but her voice was drowned in the tide of desperation that now surrounded me. Or lose everything. Suddenly, the door behind Clara burst open, revealing a blinding light, but along with it came a gut-wrenching scream, a sound so filled with pain that it chilled my blood. The specter surged forward, a titanic mass of darkness determined to engulf everything in its path. "Clara, run. We have to get out." I managed to shout, my voice straining against the swirling chaos, but she stood rooted to the spot, staring in horror. Then, in the intense darkness, a single, fragile beam broke through and illuminated the words of a hidden text, just as everything in me cried to turn back. I was desperate now, tumbling headfirst into a choice that would shape the fate of my loved ones forever, knowing every moment counted. As Clara's haunted eyes met mine, a realization coursed through her, and with a heart-wrenching determination, she screamed, "You have to choose to save us. The heart of the library, find it. Before it's too late." But before I could react, the laughter erupted anew, a chilling echo enveloping us, and out of the shadows behind Clara burst forth an army of contorted figures, ghosts of the library, hungry and enraged. They were here to protect their secrets, here to drag me into the endless night, and just as I made my move, ready to face whatever unknown lay ahead, the darkness exploded outward with a deafening roar, and I was pulled forward, tumbling into the unknown where screams awaited grounding, and choices bled through every horrifying tale. The world shifted violently as I was sucked into the cacophony of shadows and whispers, the library itself convulsing around me like a creature awakened from a long slumber. I landed hard on a cold, unforgiving floor, the air thick with the stench of decay and memory. My heart raced, each beat a countdown to some unknown horror, the echo stretching out like a dark melody in the air. Emerging from the swirling darkness, I found myself in a cavernous chamber deep within the library, if it could even be called that anymore. Shelves reached the ceiling, their contents rotting and crumbling, books lying strewn about like the remnants of old lives, pages flapping lazily in a non-existent breeze. I rolled onto my back, staring at the undulating shadows above, which seemed to mock my every breath. "Clara!" I shouted, but only silence answered. I scrambled to my feet, wiping the dust from my hands, pushing away the clamoring need to scream, to flee. I strained to sense her presence, feeling the gravitational pull of her lingering essence somewhere close, like a candle flickering in the depths of night. As I moved deeper into this hidden abyss, my skin prickled as if the air was charged with static electricity. Distant whispers began to coalesce into chilling clarity, fragments of conversations and cries for help. They curled around me, wrapping tighter and tighter, coaxing the glimmers of sanity from my mind. "Help us, we're still here," they pleaded, voices layered with anguish, resonating from the spine of a particularly worn tome. I hesitated, contemplating their unholy desire, every heartbeat echoing their desperation. Surrendering my will to the shadows now felt like a death sentence, yet I found myself irresistibly drawn towards the sound, lured as if by the sirens of myth. With a feral fascination, I pulled the book from the shelf. The spine cracked open, releasing a cloud of dust that caught the dying light. Written within were not mere tales but vivid accounts of the library's former inhabitants, their dreams and nightmares immortalized in ink. Each page bore witness to a soul ensnared, suffocated beneath the weight of this eldritch place. Suddenly, I was doused in memories that weren't mine. Images flickered in front of my eyes, glimpses of lives once vibrant and now dismembered by despair. A child clutching a broken doll, a mother crying, a father lost in sorrow. It was then, amidst the echoing sorrow, that I understood this library fed on grief itself, each story, a sacrifice to the darkness. "Find the heart." Clara's desperate call resonated again, clearer this time, guiding me through the labyrinth of despair. I knew I had to act, had to confront whatever dark being ruled this twisted domain, for every moment spent here drew me closer to an eternity of torment. I pressed deeper into the bowels of the library, the air growing colder with every footstep. Shadows danced along the walls, taking monstrous shapes that lunged and retreated like hungry predators. Each creaking floorboard resonated like a death knell, reverberating through my bones, each step luring me further into the void. As I rounded a corner, my breath hitched. In the distance lay a large door, pulsating with an unearthly glow, its entrance surrounded by what looked like withering roots extending from the floor, eager hands wrapping around the edges of reality. The door throbbed, a heartbeat that paralleled my own, infusing me with an exhilarating dread that I reached for the handle but faltered, something cold brushing against my back, an icy tendril that slithered along my spine, heavy with malice. I turned, heart hammering in my chest, to face countless flickering shadows gathering around me, their twisted forms beckoning for attention, for acknowledgement of their fates left unfinished. Don't. They chorused, the symphony of voices rising to a fever pitch. We are the story that dies when you leave. You have to stay. Join us, a scream lodged in my throat, the primal need to escape warring with their plea. I tore my gaze from the sinister mingling shadows, dismissing their grotesque formations. The pulsing door called me back with more allure. If I could just reach out and turn the handle, I could find the heart. Clara might still be there. Driven by instinct, I lunged toward the glowing door, but before I could grab the handle, everything shattered around me. The walls twisted, the shadows lunged, and the air stilled as the cacophony hushed. Only a singular voice rang clear through the void, the voice, familiar and wretched, echoed, "Join me." It was her. I turned toward the sound, realization piercing my heart as Clara's figure materialized amidst the shadows, smiling but with an expression of desperate need that twisted my gut. The sight sent a jolt of hope and paralyzing fear through me. "Clara!" I cried, but as her haunting smile widened, her eyes glazed over, revealing an abyss where once was warmth. "You must choose," she whispered, voice coated with sorrow, "before the library takes you forever." The shadows shrieked, coiling relentlessly around me, and just as I finally reached for her hand, the ground shifted, a terrifying roar echoing from the depths of the library. The shadows surged toward Clara, bidding her to retreat, but this time I didn't hesitate. That I gripped her frail fingers, and in that moment, the decision was made, a spiraling descent into the war between light and dark filled with terrifying uncertainty. But the earth shook, and the door behind me flew open, revealing not salvation, but a seething void, ready to consume us both, together. Clara shouted, her voice unwavering now, instilling strength within me. But as I stepped forward, ready to confront the darkness, the silence shattered around us, filled with deafening screams, and in the blinding light, I caught a glimpse of what lay ahead, the heart of the horror, and the unspeakable truth that could leave us both trapped, or worse. I woke up in that same, damned library, a place I had come to despise yet could never escape. The air was thick with the stench of forgotten memories, an overwhelming mixture of dust, decay, and desperation. Shadows stretched across the shelves, flickering and twisting like broken glass, threatening to pull me back into the fray of darkness I had fought so hard against. But amidst this horror, something gnawed at me. Ominous whispers, the myriad voices entwined within the very wood and stone, seemed more alive than ever. "Clara!" I called, my voice trembling as it echoed through the lifeless hall. The darkness thrummed in response, pulsating with a sinister joy, a reminder that I was still tangled within its web. I couldn't let the shadows win, I couldn't lose her. She had been my guiding light, my friend, my anchor in a world that had turned to ash. From the corner of my eye, a flash of movement caught my attention. I spun around, heart racing, and saw Clara standing at the end of a long aisle, her figure ethereal and wavering, like a memory slipping through my fingers. Her hair billowed as if caught in a breeze, but the grim look on her face pierced through me like ice. "You shouldn't have come back," she whispered, her voice laced with a sorrow that felt like an even deeper shadow. "Clara, I'm here to save you." I shouted, determination flooding my veins. But she shook her head, tears shimmering in her eyes. "You have to understand," Clara pleaded, taking a step back, "you don't belong here. None of us do. We've been trapped for so long." The chill of her words wrapped around me like chains, snaking through my heart. "Then let me get you out," I cried out, stepping toward her. But she stepped further away, almost as if she was being pulled back by some unseen force. "You don't know what you're asking for. The heart feeds on fear and desire," she cried. "We must confront it together, but only one of us can leave." The shattering truth hit me like a tidal wave. Clara was part of this dark world just as much as the shadows that consumed it. It was the darkness that thrived on our deepest fears and heartbreaks, twisting our dreams into nightmares. Our bond had become another thread woven into the malevolent tapestry of this place. Clara. We can fight it together. But fear rippled across her features, a ghostly mask of anguish. One must embrace it while the other escapes. It's the only way. No. The word exploded from my lips, desperate and hollow. Together. But even as I shouted, I felt the pulsating heartbeat reverberating through the very ground we stood on, a dark echo that rippled through the air like a siren song, insistent, alluring. Suddenly, the darkness surged, swallowing my vision momentarily in an engulfing void. It clawed at my mind, tearing through the flimsy layers of my resolve, reshaping its narrative into something more sinister. You are so close to the truth, yet so far from redemption, a thousand voices hissed around me, swirling in a cacophony of despair. I stumbled, disoriented, as I felt the library itself warp and shift, the shelves morphing into grotesque visages of tortured souls captured in their own tragedies. Help me! Clara screamed from the depths of that darkness, her voice strained as she began to fade before my eyes. Each word was laced with heart-wrenching despair. Find the heart. It's hidden, but you must make the choice: save yourself or me. Without thinking, I tore myself from the shadows' grasp, me arms outstretched toward Clara, desperate to bridge the distance between us. But the weight of the library crashed upon me like an avalanche, fracturing my senses, painting my vision with utter blackness that threatened to swallow me whole. Even amid the horror, I could hear Clara, her voice echoing like a faint whisper lost in time. You hold the key, a fragment of our bond, she urged. Do you cherish me enough to leave your shadow behind? And with each word, I felt the darkness grow heavier, pressing down, threatening to crush me beneath its weight. That I closed my eyes, feeling the thin veil of reality begin to crack under the pressure of choice. Dread loomed, horror gnawed at my very essence. The heart of despair pulsed, aching for resolution, for suffering to continue. Find it. Clara's plea resonated through the still air, each syllable punctuated by terror. The flickering shadows began to pull at the edges of reality, devouring her essence. A malevolent hunger awakened within the very fabric of this world. With laboring breath, I thrust myself forward, a mix of desperation and determination guiding me toward the heart of the library, the center of its torment. A frayed carpet led to an ornate door covered in runes pulsing with a sickly light. I could sense the heart's rhythm like a drumbeat repeatedly knocking against the walls of my psyche. As my hand gripped the rusted handle, Clara's face flashed before me, the girl who smiled, who laughed, who lightened the depths of despair. I thought of childhood laughter, our fleeting moments of joy, moments now devoured by the shadows. I turned, my stomach twisting, realizing the cost of this choice shadowed every heartbeat. As the door swung open, a blinding light engulfed me, seeping into my bones, painfully vibrant, yet cold. I stepped through the threshold, a realm reborn from sorrow enveloped me, and there lay the heart. Exposed and pulsating, like a grotesque flower unfurling in the heart of the storm. But as I reached for it, creeping tendrils of doubt wrapped around my heart, reminding me of all Clara had given up, our laughter, the moments shared, and a bond forged through both light and dark. Help us, the whispers twisted around me. You hold the fate of all. Choose. It wrenched at my very being, every ounce of fear and love seeping into the air. I steeled myself, the pull of the heart radiating in the depths of my soul. I could see Clara, her fading figure suspended between two realms, the light I craved in one, the darkness feeding on her essence in the other. And just as I burst forward, I heard its laughter morphing back into cries of despair, an echo urging me to lean into the darkness that waited to consume better memories. Clara! I shouted, a desperate call. Yet another scream echoed behind me, fractured, lost, unfurling like smoke in the depths of the shadows. Come back to me! I lunged forward, reaching for the very thing that could help us both, the heart pulsating against the ground, tangible yet elusive, embodying the essence of our memories. And then, in that moment, time fractured, reality twisted, and I was back in the town square, the familiar facade of Willow Creek standing before me like a ghost. The sun hung low, casting long shadows creeping toward me, and something half-formed in my mind whispered that all was not what it seemed. I turned, and Clara stood behind me, her smile radiant and unnervingly still. The shadows clung to her, yet she laughed as she stepped forward. "You did it, you saved me." She reached for my hand, warm, inviting. Yet the slightest hint of distortion danced behind her eyes, an echo from the soul of the town. That I grasped her fingers, yet the joy did not settle within me. "But what about the heart?" I questioned, dread curling around my insides like smoke, and I saw it then, the flicker of another reality, where the heart lay not in this version of Clara, but somewhere buried deep beneath the town, pulsing to a rhythm I could not ignore. Her grin faltered, and for the briefest moment, a shadow crossed her face, revealing the truth twisting beneath. "You saved me, but can you bear to leave me behind again? Can you accept that this version of Willow Creek is yours to control?" Before I could decipher her gaze, each shadow around us merged into a cacophony of laughter, the haunting sound that echoed from the depths of every fragmented memory, wrapping around my heart, squeezing tighter and tighter. "Clara." I could barely breathe, reality chafing against my skin, lines blurring between truth and illusion. But I felt it, the very essence of the darkness stirring beneath my feet, feeding and consuming the remnants of Clara's laughter. The heart pulsed in the distance. Only then did I realize how monstrous a choice I had made. It had all woven together, a tapestry of despair that pulsed beneath my very foundation, waiting for the fool who dared uncover its lies. With a painful clarity, I understood that I hadn't truly defeated the darkness, I had merely awakened it. The evil lay dormant, ready to embrace me once more. And as my reality crumbled around me, the laughter grew louder, taunting, prisming through the cracks where light dared to shine. Clara's form wavered before me, a shimmering promise in an endless abyss of shadows. And with that, the library echoed in my ears, its spine vibrated with knowledge, the truth now gnawing at my heart like a relentless predator, awaiting its next victim. And I heard it, that horrid, final line whisper across my breaking soul as the darkness surged around me in a tide of insanity: "You may have saved one heart, but there are many more to claim."